Hello and welcome to the Check Out This Record podcast. My name is Frank and with me is my good buddy Mark. This is the podcast where we talk about all sorts of musical goodness. We review albums we've never heard of before. We will suggest albums to each other to review, and we have a wide variety of musical discussions. You can check us out on Instagram and YouTube. And if you like what we have to say, please leave us a 5-star review. On YouTube, we have actually also our first Check Out This Song episode where we highlight a song we both adore and chat about just for a few minutes. So if you don't want to listen to us for an hour, bam, you get 5 minutes out of us. And if you don't like those 5 minutes, I don't know what to tell you. So hopefully everyone's safe and sound in quarantined world, i.e. planet Earth. Mark, how are you?
Doing good, Frank. I'm just hanging out and get the house on lockdown. We're listening to records loud enough to irritate our neighbors and staying inside. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now's the time to do all those things we've been needing to do, including checking out records, doing hobbies, taking guitar lessons again. So it's pretty cool, man. And I'm in a weird way, I'm enjoying this right now, so it's good. It's good. Right on, man. This episode, we're going to be reviewing an album from someone that when they release anything, I'm just waiting and salivating there. And I'm talking about Brian Fallon. And I was like this when he was performing with the Gaslight Anthem. They were that band for me for such a long time. And I mean an absolute long time. We're also going to be adding, though, something to this episode because another band came out with an album recently as well. That band is Pearl Jam. Now, before we do an overview of the album, not track by track, I was just thinking for me, Mark, I used to listen to Pearl Jam a lot, the 10 versus Vitalogy days. Then I just stopped. And I think this happens with a lot of bands and artists over the years for various numbers of reasons. So you want to bust out a top 5, my man?
I certainly would.
Cool. So let's do the top 5 then on bands or artists or even albums that once we were the flag bearers for and we couldn't stop listening to, and now we're just like, okay, not listening to them so much. Would you care to start, or would you like me to, my fan?
I'd be more than happy to go first.
All right. Let's do it.
So, as always, in no particular order, but in exactly the order I mean them in. At number 5 for me, one of the bands that really got me into punk rock, influenced very heavily the way I play the drums, Pennywise. I was huge into Pennywise, and the older I got, the kind of more I saw through it, through the false idealism, through the faux punk rock ethos. And I just can't listen to Pennywise anymore. I've put some of their stuff on recently and went, I'm just not interested. And then went back to stuff I do like. So Pennywise, number 5.
There you go.
At number 4, the Dead Kennedys.
Oh.
I used to love the Dead Kennedys. And their stuff's definitely held up the course of time a little better for me than Pennywise has. But it's just something I'm not finding myself really going back to. It's not something I find connecting with me. Dead Kennedys at number 4.
Wow, okay.
Number 3, a band I saw probably like 3 years ago. They tour a lot. Less Than Jake. Yeah, just not really
not digging them
enjoying any of the records that are coming out. Not really, that live performance felt pretty lackluster to me. It was nice to hear them do some of the older stuff, but just not connecting with it anymore. I don't, I'm not particularly of the mindset that I just don't like ska anymore, because I do enjoy ska still. It's just for some reason Less Than Jake at number 3, not really doing much for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2, NoFX.
NoFX.
NoFX. I was a big NoFX fan.
I remember.
Really, So Long and Thanks for the Shoes. Probably still my favorite record. I liked Wolf in Wolf's Clothing. And that was really kind of the beginning of the end for me. And just lately, all of the releases have been horrible. I think a little bit's got to do with Fat Mike taking more of a public place in the public eye and talking more about the band and more about himself, and really, for me, just kind of ruining that the nice thing when you don't really know somebody is that you can give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And, I just don't have that anymore. The old stuff is still fun. If it comes up in a shuffle or something, cool. But I'm not listening to these records. I'm not really talking about them anymore.
They're not moving you.
Two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then number one, this was a big band for me in high school. They introduced me to the Descendants. They introduced me into reggae pretty heavily,
Right.
surf rock, if you will. I'm talking about, of course, Sublime.
Oh.
Yeah. Was a big Sublime guy, right out of high school. And I got to tell you, the records just don't hold up.
Wow.
I can play the guitar like a motherfucking riot, and then arguably the worst guitar solo in rock and roll. And I'm on the pro side of marijuana use. Our listeners won't be shocked by hearing that. I'm sure I've said it a number of times before. But this kind of like marijuana culture of that's what the whole thing's about, just gets old to me. I don't enjoy it. It's not, it's kind of irritating. And then, I just can't listen to Sublime anymore.
Now, would you still listen to 40 Ounces of Freedom, like if you had to? Because I always viewed that as like their best.
I definitely agree with you on that. I think 40 Ounces of Freedom is their better work.
You get the Descendants cover, right? You get the cover of Hope in there.
Yeah, and there's some argument to be made that, if he hadn't died when he did, if he had died a few months later and they had really finished the self-titled album with him to master it and finish it, maybe it would have sounded a little different. But I still think 40 Ounces of Freedom is the better record. He was a little more strung out in it. He was a little more honest in it. I shouldn't say honest. It just felt more genuine. The self-titled album's a little too polished.
Yeah.
And what I like about 40 is the rawness of that record.
Got it.
So for me, Sublime, I mean, it was one of those bands that I adored, really opened a lot of doors for me in terms of range of music, what styles could encompass and what that meant, and the pushing back of barriers in terms of styles and what a band can do. But at the same time, a lot of what they do just doesn't hold up. And like I said, that culture in itself of just dirty, smelly kids that just stink like pot and play broken acoustic guitars, like it's just not that cool. I don't know. I'm not trying to bang 14-year-old girls anymore because I'm not 14, so it doesn't work for me. So,
So Sublime's your number one.
Sublime's probably the number one band that I used to really carry a flag for, and just I can't.
Yeah.
So that's my list.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
I will start with mine, and we do have one that's similar, but we're a couple spots away from that. So I'll start with number 5. This is more of the band and the album. Number 5 is Dashboard Confessional, The Places You've Come to Fear the Most, particularly with that album. Mark, when I used to go out on dates in my early 20s, I wanted to impress a girl. You know what I would do?
You'd listen to some Dashboard.
I would turn up the old Dashboard to show my sensitive side. And the Get Up Kids, they decided to do their own little magical mystery tour with on a wire, and it left fans confused, and they wanted something to write home about. So who came in to swoop up those fans? It was Dashboard Confessional, and that album, The Places You Have Come to Fear the Most, it was definitely instrumental in that. I don't know if you remember this, Mark, but the place we used to play as a band, I believe it was called Stage 84.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden around that time, I started noticing a large amount of bands that just came up with these acoustic guitars and maybe like just another singer, and they were trying to play like these emo tunes. So that whole wave was occurring during that time. And even though our band didn't sound like that, I was listening to this album. Looking back, I kind of appreciate the album, but I can't say I'm listening to it front to back religiously. In fact, the next album after that is probably a little bit more well-rounded and not as maybe emo per se, and really anything they've put out recently hasn't been worth a dime. My cousin in Jersey was a big fan when the latest album came out. He called me, and he's still a traditional. I went to Best Buy and bought the CD type guy. He's like, I'm not ever going to listen to this again, and it's the first listen. So I don't think they're putting out anything of quality. So that's my number 5.
Can I tell you something?
Go, please.
I've never liked that band.
Yeah, I know you haven't.
And I get that, like, it was a scene thing. It was
definitely a scene thing.
A part of the sound of the time.
And where we live, too, because technically he's a local guy. He doesn't live here now. He lives in Nashville, but Chris Carrabba lived in South Florida, that's where we were.
I like his restaurants better, man. Carrabba's are delicious. They're a little pricey for, like upgraded Olive Garden, but those are connected, right? He's probably not at all.
No, but let's do a restaurant review while we're at it, by the way. I
would love to. I'll meet you at Carrabba's, buddy. We'll get good and fat.
Yes. Well, after the quarantine's over.
There you go. Well, touche. That's how we can do it. We can call our local Carrabba's. We'll both order the same thing.
Yes.
We'll take it home.
There you go, and eat it over. Yep, and put it on YouTube.
We'll there you go. We'll do a live reaction to our Carrabba's, and then our listeners right now are like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
All right, back to the Rock, right? So number 4, I was obsessed with them. I used to watch this VHS. It came from Birmingham. I used to watch it all day long. I'm talking about MXPX. I was in the front line or front area of the stage for their tour in '99. I snapped an old picture of Mike Herrera, got his bass pick from the show, and popped that sucker in the frame. And I had it right by me all the time. I was pissed when Blink-182 got big and MXPX didn't. I thought Life in General was a great record, and the follow-up to me, Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, was really good. Ever Passing Moment had some great Costello-type tunes. After that, the major label debut, which was Super Pop, and then they went back to their roots for Panic. But everything after that just failed to make an impression on me. I mean, I get they're getting in that 40, late 30s, early 40s age range, but like the stuff they're putting out to me is just grasping to try to stay punk, but it's not progressing anyway. The lyrics are still kind of juvenile and simple. I'm just not into them as much as I used to. Mark, any comments on MXPX?
Did you hear him do that acoustic cover of Goldfinger's Superman?
Yeah, I didn't like it. Yeah.
No, you didn't like it?
No. Did you?
I was like, oh, look at him doing Goldfinger. And then you know what I thought about?
What's that?
I like Goldfinger so much more than I like MXPX.
Well, what's funny is he's the current bass player in Goldfinger.
That would explain why he knows the song so well. I thought it was odd that he would that's such an odd cover to do.
It is.
But like to me it's cool because I'm a fucking nerd. But like, okay, so I know that's interesting. Yeah, no, it reminded me that I'd rather be listening to Goldfinger. But like I was indifferent to him doing the cover.
Yeah, it's weird, and he's got this kind of folky, twangy outfit called Tumble Down. I mean, it's okay too, but I don't know. He didn't. I don't feel there's progression there.
Is that a band or a clothing line?
Band.
Oh, okay. The way you said that, at first I thought he'd put out like an actual.
No. I'm sorry. Okay. Like a musical outfit. Tumble Down.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, MXPX, they're still playing shows. They have a huge fan base. They even did a cover of NoFX Franco and American, but they substituted lyrics in it to make it a little bit more current.
Did he not use potty language?
I think there actually may be potty language. He uses it now because they've strayed away from the whole Christian punk scene. Okay. So he's bad boy, older punk rock guy who swears now.
Oh.
Yo, hello. But yeah, there you go. So here's the next one is the one that we had the same. That was NoFX, right? I like Ribbed. I like White Trash Streams and the Bean. I like the live record. I like So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes. Pump Up the Volume.
White Trash is really good.
It is.
Yeah.
War on Heroism and Wolves and Wolves Clothing. Then the Mike that they call Fat got super aggressive and hard to read. Everything is in sarcasms, and he just set out to be like punk guy, and I think that ruined some momentum that they had musically, and everything just to me wasn't entertaining. It's like, hey, let's see how we could stir up stuff right now, and it's pretty much he's a provocateur. That's to me what he is. And plus he had a falling out with Propagandhi, who has continued to crank out like amazing and thoughtful music. So yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I'm not listening to NoFX that much anymore.
Yep.
Number two, these are kind of more current, but I was listening to them to a lot as much as a couple of years ago. So Ryan Adams, not Brian. There's no Summer of 69 here. It's more like Summer of a egotistical nut job. And I was late to this game, and when I dug in, I liked it. I liked his first album, Heartbreaker. Really liked the album Love Is Hell, and love the Replacements Husker Du influenced EP 1984. Then he covered freaking Taylor Swift's 1989 album and fed more into her ego and his. In fact, in an interview he did with her about it, they were just trying to one up each other about who could talk about themselves more. All he was talking about is how the Smiths influenced his music, and she had no idea nor interest about wanting to talk about the Smiths, and she just wanted to talk about her. And I was like, okay, listen, his versions were better, and then it comes out that he was an absolute abuser to several women, and typical moralist hypocrite. I always knew he was an asshole, and I'm all for his career being ruined. In fact, the albums that he had being released, they are not released, no more tours. These aren't things that happened when he was 18, 19. These were recent. And of course, Swiftie isn't going to denounce it, because then it ruins her name with the project that he was related to. But I just can't listen to him. Mark, anything about Ryan Adams?
No, I remember you talking about him, and I remember it not being my bag. But yeah, if he's a douchebag, fuck him. And ladies and gentlemen, how much do you love Angry Frank?
There you go. I got a little angry there, didn't I?
You did. You kept it in control there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My final one, my number one, actually the one I could probably talk about the most, but I'm going to keep it short because we have album reviews to get to. And this one hurts, but it's Thrice and Dustin Kensrue. I won't be long on this. They put out perhaps one of my most favorite concept albums ever with the Alchemy Index. And then I had, believe it or not, some exchanges with Dustin on the old Twitter machine. Lost tons of respect for him. Sold my shirt on eBay and called it a day. And that's all I have to say. I'll tell you more over person.
Wow.
Yeah, over drinks when we could start being by each other again. But yeah, I don't listen and or support Thrice and or Dustin Kensrue anymore. So. Wow,
ladies and gentlemen, Frank not wanting to slander somebody on the internet. It's like that's my job or something. I agree. I was never a big Thrice fan. I did like the Alchemy Index. I think that was the best thing that they've done, hands down.
Yeah.
And I know people love them, but I think, again, a band of their time. They just did that big reunion tour.
They did.
I didn't really. I only wanted to go because Red City Radio was on it, but I was out of town on business wherever they played. So I missed it. I would have left before they started anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I love when a band I like opens for a band I don't care about.
Yeah.
Because then, it's like my old ass can go home. The restaurants aren't closed by the time the show's over, so you can still get something decent to eat, and then make it back to wherever you are. Take a good BM, and then go to bed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Cool, man. So that's that. But hey, Mark, let's start getting to some of these reviews here. So
sure.
So we got Pearl Jam and Gigaton. And we're not going to go track by track, but this is Pearl Jam's 11th album, Gigaton. Right? It's their first album in 7 years. So right off the bat, marketing on point. Well done, lads. Clap. Lots of ads. Mark even messaged me saying there's commercials on this. And of course we have rave reviews all over the place. Now, I tagged you on something on Facebook that we both agreed, and we both, agreed to each other, said, hey, listen, they don't get a pass on this just for being Pearl Jam.
Absolutely not. I have a prepared statement.
Good. Are you surprised, real quick, though, of the consistent positive reviews?
Oh, yeah. I really scoured after listening to it and writing mine. I kind of scoured the internet to see if there were any negative reviews, and I found of the 30 positive I found one negative, where it was it's not that bad, but then they still had to suck Eddie Vedder's dick a little bit and try to say that he saved him. I'll touch on it, but dude, no, man, stop giving this band a pass. Yes, grunge music killed hair metal and saved us from living in that obnoxious world for the rest of our lives. Right? I know that that boomer Gen X cusp group that still clings to it and is still paying to go see those losers on tour are very happy to go see them. And hey, look, if that's what you're into, good for you. I'm happy you're spending money in a positive way on something you enjoy. I think your taste in music is garbage, but look, we're going to fight about that all day. That said, just because this is the last band from the grunge era doesn't mean they get a fucking free pass, man.
Right.
Like, if the record's shit, spoiler alert, it is, then you have to call it for that. Like, it's not a good record, and like, what are we doing? So you want my prepared statement?
Yeah, I'm actually waiting for it. I can't wait.
Here, let me get up to my podium. Okay.
Love it.
This record sucks. Yeah, I know you hate me. Pearl Jam is a sacred cow to not be slaughtered, but fuck that, and fuck you for thinking so.
I love this.
No band should be above scrutiny, especially a band that's 30 years old and on their 11th studio album. This thing is a steaming pile of wasted time for both the listener and the band. Clearly, this record was recorded in uninspired clusters of sessions, and while it's being praised as a democratic masterpiece, did you read that anywhere? Did you see where people called it democratic?
Sure.
Shut the fuck up. In which each member was able to contribute and add to the album's kaleidoscope of sound. It is my feeling that everyone got a few tracks to do what they wanted, and Vedder just made up whatever he wanted to and shat on the whole thing. There are those who will suggest that Vedder remains their guiding light, the voice that allowed this particular band to outlast an entire generation of imitators. Yeah, that's bullshit. As a band, they did a better job of not getting too fucked up and ruining the band for themselves. Right? They're just the last grunge band. Foo Fighters don't count.
No.
Okay?
He's the last singer. He's the last lead singer.
Right, he's the last lead singer. I mean, like, look, I'll give you that.
He's the Betty White of everybody.
He is. He's the Betty White of grunge. Yeah. And I'll give them that. Like, right, like, look, it's hard to be a band. It's hard to be a band for 30 years. Congratulations, you made it. This thing still sucks. Vedder's voice being the reason that they were able to survive unjustly bestows sainthood for a signature voice of mediocre lyrics and mumbling. No one mumbles like him. And people, for whatever fucking reason, are into it. I like a lot of bands where the singer isn't pitch perfect or wherein the vocals are less than desirable because the content of the music makes the messenger's voice a lower priority. In their prime, they had some great songs with genuine angst, drive, and something to say. They were a tight musical group that understood crafting a great song was more than a good chorus and hook. They weren't afraid to challenge the system. The band's superglue to fan wasn't Eddie. I should rephrase that. It wasn't his fucking voice. Right? It wasn't him mumbling. It was an ability to connect with their fans on a primal level and portraying themselves as the band of the everyman, right? When they came out, you fucking felt like you could be in this band. You understood the angst. You know, Jeremy, man, we all knew some kid that was fucked up like that. Most of you fucking cocksuckers connected to it because you were the kid picking on Jeremy. But we're not going to talk about that.
Nice.
Anyways, Gigaton has little to zero soul. It lacks creative drive and is lyrically void of any real statement and clearly casts the band as separate from, if not completely unaware of who their audience is. This record is shit. Everything about it is shit. You shouldn't buy it. It is shit. Thank you. That is my prepared statement. How'd I do, buddy?
Oh my gosh, dude. I can't top it.
I mean, dude, like I was so angry listening to this thing because, in all honesty, like we're going to talk about a Brian Fallon record, right?
Yeah.
Who Gaslight Anthem for both Frank and I. I hate the comparison that he's the Springsteen of our generation,
right?
But he was a creative and enthusiastic songwriter. He has a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
Right. Pearl Jam for me has 2 records. I'm only a fan of 10 and like half a verse. Right. I know that you like Vitology.
I do. Yeah.
And there's probably some other decent stuff out there, right? I mean, 11 studio albums.
Yeah.
There should be at least 5 good ones.
Right.
Right. And I'm sure to Pearl Jam fans, there's fucking 12. But that my point being that this had the least to do for me to be positive about it. All they had to do was throw a couple songs together, have a genuine conception and tone, and I would have been like, hey, look, it's not for me, but it's a fucking well-crafted record. It's not. It's just not a well-crafted record. It's all over the place. There's clearly no guidance. I've read a few things that, the album was recorded over a few years in a few different locations. Like, yeah, everybody got to fucking do their own home studio fucking part to this record. And then at the end, they went, all right, Eddie, just fucking do whatever you want over the top of it. And then, like, you can find on the internet the rest of the band justifying their asses off as to why this is a good record and why Eddie was so good on it. And, like, you can tell they're full of shit. They're just going like, hey, look, we put this thing together the best we can. People just wanted another record, so we gave it to them. Like, dude, fuck you. Like, do something genuine or get the fuck out of here. No, like, who cares? You would have been fine. Nobody was worried about your legacy. Nobody gave a shit. Like, just go on tour, sell fucking t-shirts. Like, just stop putting out shit fucking records. Like,
yeah. I mean, my thing with them and why I got turned off after Vitology is just because to me the band was always Eddie and like these other guys, And I know that they're staples in the band. Stone Gossard and Mike McCready, the guitar players, and Stone writes a lot of tracks on his own right too. But to me, it's always been just to feed Eddie's ego. And I feel now, especially like you were saying, we got to put him in a glass case, right? Because all the singers have passed away. And I don't know, this album just, it killed it for me. I mean, it's way too long. It has very little replay value. The best song,
excruciatingly long,
I felt, is called Take the Long Way. And that's written by the drummer, Matt Cameron, who was the drummer of Soundgarden. So I don't even know if that was like an intended eventual Soundgarden tune, but to me, that was the best. And listen, hey, I get it. He never fails short of his own self-importance, right? Gigaton, the ice caps for the album cover. I'm sure if we read the lyrics, there's anti-Trump lyrics in there somewhere, but it's uneven. Like, I give you props again. Like Mark said, props for being a band, props for this time, props for cranking out music. And yes, we haven't religiously listened to Pearl Jam since those early days, but you don't get a pass. There's no hall passes. No hall passes.
All they had to do was softball a record. Right? Like, here's 8 to 10 songs, 40 minutes, 45 minutes at the most, rock and roll songs, boom, 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 boom. You have that fucking disco song, whatever the fuck that was. Like, oh my God, this record irritates me to no fucking end.
Dance to Clairvoyance, that one.
Oh, get the fuck out of here, dude. And like, I listeners know that I'm a political punk rock fucking junkie. I love political punk. I want you to be in my face. I want you to talk about what the problem is. I want you to serve truth to power, right? Sure. And the Trump reference in this is a fucking cheap fucking like, it's not even like a well-crafted lyric. It, like, I didn't bother to write it down because it just like, I was just like, fuck it, whatever. But like, it's such a cheap shit blow. Like, it's not like, it's just like, oh, I'm gonna fucking say Trump in this and date the fuck out of this record.
Yeah. So to piggyback off of that, I'm really the polar opposite of Mark in that, where I actually don't like the politics, which I know probably I see a million fingers pointing to me right now being like, well, you listen to punk rock, right? I get it. It's more musical, and yes, there were some political lyrics that resonated with me, but I am on the opposite side of the spectrum. However, though, I do appreciate bands who go ahead and make that their thing, i.e. anti-flag propaganda. But propaganda does it in such a thoughtful and intelligent way where they could get to someone who may think these other things and then start being like, okay, well, listen, there's a lot of gray. And that's what I like. If someone being like, hey, I agree totally different than you do, but I'm going to speak it to you in a way that's universal so we could have some kind of really civil discourse, then you got me. But just being here angry that Trump's in office and like Mark just said, boom, dates it. Great.
Hey, look, it's 2020. The Suicide Machines have put out their first record in 15, 17
and I
years,
love the Suicide Machines, and they're political. Yes, yeah,
they're political. They've never been shy about it. They've always spoken truth to power. They put this album together at the end of last year. There's some interviews you can go back. They'll talk about the recording process.
Right.
They had all the time in the world to write a song about fuck Trump and what he's doing wrong and all that shit.
Right.
They do it once where they mention a wall, and that's it.
Right.
But they never call them out by name. They never they're not like they're facing the things that are true to them and in the moment.
And walls are universal meanings. I mean, that goes way beyond just an actual physical wall or the wall that Trump wants to build, you know?
Right. Well, and for this, the disconnect between, you being a world traveler, you being able to get on your fucking jet and just go wherever you want and fucking gallivanting around the fucking globe, you are not the dudes listening to fucking 10 still or fucking verse or the old fucking records or any of their fucking records.
Yeah.
You're not the guys who buy your records anymore, and you clearly don't relate to them.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm sure their fans are gonna be like, "Fuck you, bro! I like it. I bought that record, and I still get it." Dude, please, it's okay to say a band you like did something you don't fucking like, right? And Rancid is a top band for me and Frank.
Same
Neither
here.
one of us will listen to that fucking Domino's Fall piece of shit.
That's true.
Right? There can't be sacred cows. Pearl Jam, yes, they're the last fucking grunge band. Yes, they meant the fucking world to you. Doesn't mean they're putting out a decent record today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet a lot of people too, those ones are like, oh, I'll like anything they put out. Or, you guys get around with your buddies and be like, yeah, Pearl Jam put out a new album. I bet at the end of the day, you don't like the fact that Vedder's saying stuff in there that you really don't care or want to hear about, i.e. dated Trump lyrics at the end of the the day. So, and
lyrics you can't connect to.
Or lyrics you can't connect to
this fucking, there's just nothing in this that you go back to Jeremy and that connection between a kid in school who's getting fucked over by life and I joke that most of the people who like this stuff are probably the bullies that were picking on Jeremy, but you at least understood it. There's nothing to understand here. There's nothing to relate to. It's a steaming pile of garbage with over fantasized lyrics that do nothing. Hey, look, you want to put together a fantasy record that's about all this different stuff that doesn't connect to anything tangible, that's one thing. But to do it in a faux sensibility where you're creating this sense of grandeur and this emergency, to where there's none, and then be like, oh, but it's real because I fucking said Trump's name. Fuck you, get the fuck out of here.
I agree. And listen, man, it goes back to a self-importance. It goes back to ego, and just sitting there, ripping on Trump all day, or now talking about the environment. Because I tell you what, no one gives a rip about the environment because you have a pandemic going on. But just saying that it's just very surface level. It's like, give me something deeper. Give me something that I could sit and think in the middle of the night and be like, okay, well, let me research more about this and see exactly what's going on. And I think we've come to the agreement that, hey, man, I don't care if you're Pearl Jam or not, you don't get any hall passes.
Yeah, none,
absolutely not. I think that's the best review we've ever done.
Thank you. Well, speaking of not getting hall passes, we got to talk about, also released, if you're listening to this on the Monday that it came out, 2 Fridays ago, Brian Fallon, formerly of the Gaslight Anthem, released a record called Local Honey.
One of our favorite singer-songwriters, Mr. Brian Fallon.
Yeah. No, I've been vocal about not being a big fan of his solo stuff. My wife is into it.
Mm-hmm.
She agrees with me a bit that the records don't hold the weight that the Gaslight records did. And we'll talk about that a little further in depth. But hey, look, we were still very excited but Brian had a lot to live up. Unlike unlike Pearl Jam, he had a lot to live up to.
Yeah, and you know what? I will give Brian Fallon the time of the day and the listens over and over and over on his record, as opposed to the Pearl Jam. And I did pay this record way more attention than the Pearl Jam record. And the side story, I always try to get him to reply to me on Twitter, but he never does. He recently mentioned an 80s Dome record and said to everyone something along the lines like, "Okay, now start a podcast to talk about the record, and I'll come on." And I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "I got one with my buddy." So as you can imagine, I was all over that. Anyway, no response, but I'm still trying. But Brian, listen, he made his bones in the New Jersey band, the Gaslight Anthem. And first of all, are they even a band anymore? I think they're on like a kind of permanent hiatus, maybe.
I thought it was an indefinite hiatus.
Indefinite hiatus.
They did that reunion tour for the 10th anniversary
of 59 Sound.
Of 59 Sound, and I was hopeful after that hey, maybe they're able to squash whatever issues they're having as a band and be able to get back together, but it doesn't appear that that's happened.
No. And listen, I'm a fan of all the Gaslight records, some more than others. I'd say 59 Sound's my fave, but I really do like them all in their own separate ways. But the Gaslight Talks are for another episode, but I definitely dig them, and I know you do as well, Mark.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So you wanna jump into Local Honey?
Yeah. So real quick, in 2016, Brian Fallon released his first solo record, Painkillers, and I think that was a great debut album. In 2018,
I agree. My favorite of his solo work.
Yeah, and I bought the CD, I bought the vinyl, I bought the whole 9 yards there. In 2018, we got a second album, Sleepwalkers. Not as good as Painkillers. I would say a few tracks I go back to on that one. What about you, Mark? You agree with me there?
Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with you. It just didn't kind of have the same weight to me that Painkillers did. But hey, look, he's still figuring out what it means to be acoustic, or what it means to be solo.
Solo, yeah.
And clearly for him, that's not just being acoustic. I think as we're kind of getting into it, as far as his projects go, I think I'm definitely a Gaslight Anthem fan first. Mm-hmm. I'm a Horrible Crows fan second.
Oh, great album. Yeah, that was a great album.
And then the solo stuff.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see him keep going with the Horrible Crows thing, but hey, I don't know why he chose not to. That's something we can look into. But it was just one of those things for me.
Yeah.
I would rather see him stay in that world. I like him in a rock and roll environment. And I think, those first two records, he's really trying to embrace a little bit of that soul that he really digs, that I don't want to call it pop. I don't think it's poppy. Do you think this record definitely tries to get poppy.
Yeah.
And it irritates me to no end, but I didn't feel like the previous records were I felt like he went for soul in the way that Elvis Costello goes for.
Right. He was always a tribute to the things that influenced him the most, and, American Slang, so back to Gaslight for a second. So American Slang was a pivotal album because that shifted things lyrically for Fallon. We didn't see any Marias and Marys anymore with references of the songs that influenced them, from The Boss, from Petty, from The Clash, from Dylan. Instead, things became a little bit more simple. And we also got a departure of the musical style too, which is cool. In Local Honey now, we're gone are the electric guitars, and as big band sounding songs go, those are gone as well. And we get the stripped back kind of showcase of sorts. And it's interesting. It's only 8 songs, right? Clocks in at 31 minutes. So
my favorite thing about the record.
There you go. I mean, listen, I'm cool with him kind of stripping things back and doing a showcase of sorts. And I know you are too, Mark, and I think we always have that. But the songs, it's all about the songs, right? The songs got to be good. The songs in the album. I mean, first observation for me, and of course we'll do track by track, but his primary instrument, it's the guitar, but where is it? I mean, I hear it faintly, but I need more. I just don't care if it's chords. Give me more guitar, because then it's just a background instrument in the midst of everything else that's going on. To me, as a guitar player, I want to hear more about it. And I think we kind of agreed with that too offline a little bit, right, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely wanted more guitar drive on it. I felt that the album was balanced in terms of, you know, what instrument was the focal point of the particular song.
So good
The
that you put it
problem
like
with
that.
that being is that, you know, we get like some bizarre, you know, electric sounding drums doing these, you know, disconnected rhythms, or these like overtly off rhythms that just didn't work. You know, I'd like his piano playing, particularly in Vincent. But I want, you know, and it's one of the things I know from him is guitar driven music. I would have liked to see him really focus more on, you know, less on all of this filigree and whatever the fuck this drummer is doing on this record, and a rock and roll band. I want him on an electric guitar, if not an acoustic guitar half the time. I want one other guitar behind him. I want a bass player and a drummer. And, you know, look, we want to throw in some pianos or some organs behind that. That's fine. But all this extra little frilly shit in the background, I don't need it. It's not helping the record. It's this weird thing of stripping down from a big heavy band, right? Stripping down from a punk band, if you want to categorize them that way, which, you know, we can argue later whether or not they were a punk band. Stripping it back and then filling it with other shit, and that's where this doesn't work, right? Because if we strip it down, it's, you know, there's a lot of demos of him, or not demos, but recordings of him playing these songs in their songwriting stages, of him playing an acoustic guitar, him playing a piano, and working through the song and playing it for you, that were fantastic before this record came out.
Yeah.
And the record came out, and it's this other thing that you're just like, what happened to the fucking songs we heard?
Yeah, so let's get into it. So we get When You're Ready. I mean, I might like this album a little bit more, I think, than you do, but I will definitely point out too what needs to be pointed out. But When You're Ready, I mean, I like this still for an opening track. I mean, I did mention, of course, the lack of the guitars here, but in this tune we do hear them. We get a twangy riff. It's not overly complicated though, with regards to chord structures or what he's doing specifically. I mean, he's doing finger picking in the beginning, and I like the lyrics, which is, when you're ready to choose someone, make sure you love them as half as much as me. I mean, I kind of like that. What was your thoughts on this opening track?
You know, I thought this to be one of the, it's going to sound confusing, one of the most forgettable songs on the track, because it was just straightforward a song. I would have liked the lyric to have been at least half as much as me. It does come across a little creepy, I suppose, that, like, you know, make sure they love you half as much as me. Like, I don't know. It just seems, because it does feel like it's a song where he's speaking to a child, and that child leaving the world and entering relationships. But hey, look, I don't have kids. I don't know. Maybe you do want your kid to fall in love with somebody, but for that person not to not love them as much as they love you, I don't know. It didn't work for me as a lyric. It felt a little odd. But, you know, honestly, this song just kind of starts and stops, and then we're into 21 Days. Like, I listened to it like three times to really just kind of pick it up and get a feel for it, because it was just really almost immediately out of my head.
So now, what do you think about 21 Days?
So lyrically, I really like what he does with it. Musically, it's a mess. It's kind of half acoustic, half electric. His voice is all over the place, singing wise.
Right.
The drum machine, or whatever it is, if they're just like adding an effect to the drums, if it's the way he's playing it, it's a theme that comes back in the record, but it doesn't really work.
Yeah, you know, listen, the beginning I felt is haunting. We get some double track vocals. It captures the loss that they're experiencing, but then that drum machine kicks in, and I'm just like, whoa, lost me right there, right? Yeah. It's almost a little too poppy then with it, and it drowns, of course, the guitar, which, again, I feel is a common theme here. The chorus is catchy, but you get the super common chord progressions, which I wish sometimes he wouldn't use. I think he could have done something else with the chords. I mean, listen, hey, I couldn't write the song, but I mean, that's my thoughts. And that drum machine, it just lost me on that,
Yeah, I think lyrically it's some of his best work to date.
Yeah.
Certainly it's some of his best work on this record, and of his solo career. I'm with you that like the drums threw me off. It feels disconnected in parts to itself.
Yeah.
And like I said, it just doesn't sound like him. You know what I mean? Like there are places where you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
So Vincent's the next track.
I could tell how enthused you are.
Listen, I don't love what he does with the lyrics, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There's videos of him playing this on a piano by himself.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and I like the song.
Yeah, it's an interesting track.
I can't stand it. Feels cheap in its structure. The more I dig into the lyrics, I just find it like, that line, "My name is Jolie, but I hate that song."
Yeah,
and there's never anything more to that.
It just,
like that's all we really know about Jolie. The rest of the song's about something else. So it's just kind of this cheap Dolly Parton reference for no reason. Like I just.
Yeah. I mean, thus far, it becomes the most interesting track because it's about someone murdering their abuser, and it has a classic country vibe to it. I mean, it took me a few listens to even know what it was talking about. Again, I would have liked, the arrangement. I would like some different strumming here, and maybe some points of the song where that climax of the murder happens to get like a little darker and moodier. I feel that it's not meshing the content of the lyrics with actually what's going on musically. I guess he's trying to keep though that vibe with the musical theme. I did see the piano version, and I prefer that better. So
yeah. I think it works better. There's not as much going on around him. It allows what should be a song about solace and darkness to shine.
Yeah.
And it's, we're adding all this fill that disconnects it from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we get I Don't Mind If I'm With You or She Loves You Part 2. Now, She Loves You is a B-side from American Slang. The intro is the exact same. I mean, and that's where I get lost, because why not just put out She Loves You, the acoustic version on here? On YouTube, the majority also agrees with the She Loves You comparisons. And listen, I guess it's okay if there's a theme. I mean, Lord, here on the last record we reviewed had similar melodies, which I guess you could coin as being recycled, but that was in the whole album. And I would have liked to. What maybe he could have done is he could have had this been the sequel to She Loves You, and then that would have made sense. So maybe with the opening riff, so maybe calling it She Loves You Part 2 or something from the song like President Street, and that would have then made sense, because then those two songs would have been seamless into each other. However, though, I'm telling you, that opening riff, it's She Loves You, and I'm just like, well, that's the only song I'm thinking about why I'm listening to this song.
Right. I agree. It's the same intro. It's basically the same chords. It's basically the same song structure. It just sounds. I agree with you. I would have loved to connect it, keep that song structure, and tie it back to that song. Make a reference to it, or just say, "Hey, look, this is She Loves You with my solo band, and not that." Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a legal issue why he couldn't do that. Who knows?
Maybe.
But it just made me want to listen to Gaslight Anthem, not this record.
Totally.
Lonely for You Only.
Yes.
Can I tell you something?
Go ahead.
I think this is the best song on the album.
No, I agree with you. Okay.
A little poppy, but a straightforward song.
Yeah.
It's just a song.
Yeah.
A great little clever chorus and hook. The lyrics are bright and clean. Yeah. Good storytelling. The guitars are present. I didn't hear any claves or background noises.
Yes, straight up.
There wasn't all this playing around. It was just a song. This was the stripped back band I wanted for the entire record.
Yeah. So when we talk about we don't mind it kind of being moodier and acoustic, we kind of mean this. I mean, this is my favorite song on the album. It sounds, there's a little modern country elements to it, but it changes the tempo in the album. It's nice to hear the guitars. It's nice to hear them clean. I like it when I could hear the chords that he's playing. Now, I heard or I read some other comments where they said parts of it kind of sound like Keepsake from Handwritten. I don't hear that as much in the chords. Not definitely blatantly like the previous track. And I like the I'm Lonely for You Only. I just like that line, and I think his vocal delivery is nice and clean with this on there. So totally agree with you. I think this is my favorite on here.
Definitely like a classic kind of Brian Fallon tribute to classic rock and roll, classic songwriting thing, right? I'm lonely for you. Like it's just clean. It's, very like I think it's the best thing on there. And then Horses, I have no idea what the song is supposed to be. And it honestly, it feels like they didn't either. Horses have been a theme, certainly through the solo stuff.
Right.
Dude, I just couldn't figure out what the fuck this song was supposed to be. Like it's light and it's a little catchy, but at the same time, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I think it's my least favorite on the record. I don't like the drumming. Again, it's too similar to the vibes we've heard earlier in the record. This is where, if you listen to it super closely, we start getting repetition on the chord progressions, which again is fine, I guess. But I'm just pointing it out. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of this song that much.
Yeah. So next is
Hard
Feelings.
Hard Feelings. Yeah, no Hard Feelings. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, this one sounded like something else too, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't hate it, but the rhyme scheme lyrically feels a little cheap in parts. And the less filler in the song, the more I like it, and I almost like this one.
Yeah, I think the drumming is more pronounced, and I could hear the drums, right? And the last minute with the piano, guitar, bass, and drums playing and kind of all coming together. Yeah, I dig it. I dig it. And again, I know we talked about this being something similar to a Gaslight tune, but as of now, I can't think exactly what that is. But yeah, Hard Feelings. I don't mind it. Absolutely not. Then we get the eighth and final track, You Have Stolen My Heart. It's a fitting closing track, I think, to the album. One thing about, some of these tunes is that they're very, very honest. I mean, I hear the differences in this song more than others now that I've listened to this song quite a few times. I feel like maybe just in other spots, it was maybe trying to be this song, and I think it's a touching way to end a record. So I actually didn't mind this song. What about you?
Lyrically, I dig it. Really wish there wasn't all those little sounds floating around in this thing, because it makes it feel cheaper to me, especially against really nice, heartfelt lyrics. You've heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. Find the video of him doing this on an acoustic guitar. It's 10 times better.
Yeah.
But one of the better songs on the record, you guys hear me and Frank say all the time, like, if this had been an EP of 21 Days, Lonely for You Only, Hard Feelings, and this, gorgeous little EP.
Right. Gorgeous
little EP. But I mean, that's literally half the fucking record, Frank.
That is.
It's like, so for me, overall, it's a low rating for me.
It's a low rating.
I had much higher hopes. Despite not loving the last two albums, I always have a lot of hope when it comes to these records. It did make me very nostalgic for that kind of middle Gaslight album or Gaslight Anthem album category, the American slang, the handwritten.
Yeah.
Both of those records come across very personal. I feel like he tried to write really deep for this. I think he tried to make it personal. And there's a lot of videos of him talking about the songwriting process and how he's not a songwriter and how he doesn't want to be thought of that. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
To try to perform in that sense.
So good you brought that up. Yeah.
I wish he were in a place where he didn't feel forced to crank these records out every 2 or so years, because the songs are there. The songwriting is there. it feels like he's rushing too much stuff together. This backing band is clearly different from the band that's been on the other two albums. I wholeheartedly hope he stops playing with them altogether. They've rescheduled the tour. Frank and I were actually going to go see Brian Fallon.
Absolutely, man.
What was that, last week? 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, but obviously, all that got canceled amidst this coronavirus business, and they've rescheduled for July. And we're still going as far as I'm concerned. So my hope is that we get a little bit of a change up in the band. We get a little bit more rock and roll. I wouldn't even mind if we got a little more country out of him.
No.
I just don't want this odd, pseudo pop, pseudo electric drum, whatever this thing is. Give me the 3 or 4 songs I named on this record. Give me a couple from the other albums. Give me some Horrible Crow stuff, because I believe that guy's still playing guitar behind him. And then throw me a couple Gaslight songs. I'll be really happy to see Brian. And hey, look, Brian, this is Mark talking. If the next record takes 5 years, it's okay. All right, buddy? I want you to focus on the song quality all the way across the spectrum. Especially if it's just your name on it, really think about what you're doing, bud.
And we're stoked to see him live. I
am excited.
Absolutely.
I won't tell you I'm not. I am excited to see him.
And if Justin Townes Earl is playing with him, who's another guy I like, I'm excited about that as well. And you brought up, I think, the most interesting thing, Mark, which is that I think what happened with Fallon and what happens with him is that we expect a lot from him, especially because right out of the gates, he was labeled the premier songwriter. And listen, it really, if you think about it, there's nothing that he's done that's been deemed as bad or poor, or by any means, I'm not like, it's not like what we were talking about with the Pearl Jam stuff, right? By any stretch of the imagination. But I think it was that perfect storm where Gaslight hit at the right time. It became a resurgence of young and old Bruce fans because of that. Of course, then he gets compared to Bruce. And I think everyone expects just constantly the highest quality out of him. And listen, it's not, I don't think it's as good as Painkillers. I may actually like it. I may listen to it more than Sleepwalkers. I would have, again, liked more guitar sounds, not loud or electric. I'm okay with the vibe, but I want to hear them. And what's cool about Brian is, from what I see when I follow him, I know him on a first name basis, right? He's a lifelong student. I know he takes guitar lessons. I know recently he took piano lessons to learn how to play piano. I would have liked to have seen musically some venturing out of that comfort zone. So instead of playing the standard chord progressions, the D, the A, the B, the G, or the C, the G, the A to the F, I would have liked maybe, adding a little riff from one of the scales in there, or maybe playing some inverse chords, or give me something from one of the modes, just because I think he could have really then expanded on those. Listen, I support him and really everything that he does. I would buy the record because, well, there's a version where it's honey colored, the vinyl, so I would go ahead and do that. But sure. I think you nailed it on the head, where I think there's a lot of pressure on him to put out constantly good tunes, and there's nothing wrong with taking time between albums.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, look, I don't know what his financial situation is. Certainly everybody's in a hard spot these days. Just take your time, buddy. You don't gotta it doesn't need to come out next year. It doesn't need to come out 2022. Take your time. Yeah. Do a Gaslight album in between.
And the way things work now is, I mean, you could release a couple songs here and there, just as, and then in anticipation for the album, and they don't even have to be on the album. Yeah. So
I would have liked a few of these songs, and I promise I'll put it down after this. When I say stripped down, I mean, like, those acoustic versions are him, in a lobby, or him in front of a crowd, just kind of doing a quick little. I would have liked studio produced, him and a guitar, him and a piano.
Yeah.
Simple. Yeah. Really, and I know he's afraid of his voice. And there's nothing I can say here on this podcast that's going to change his mind about that. And I get that.
Right.
But take your time. Find a producer who's going to let you do your thing, that's going to bring out the best in you, and not, say silly things like, you should say that sadder. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
come to your own emotions with these things. Help you find somebody who grows them genuinely, and take your time. Be proud of what you have, because look, all the attention you're getting is from these acoustic and solo performances. Play up to that.
Yeah.
It's your forte. Don't be afraid of it.
Right. Absolutely. And I know in an interview I read too, he stopped smoking a couple of years back. So his, voice is now a little different. And listen, Dylan did that, and we got Nashville Skyline. So I get it. I kind of get all those things as a person who listen, he does it on a much larger scale. He writes songs for the whole world to hear. I just, write songs in a book and never release them. So that's my thing. But maybe during this quarantine time, Mark, I might do that. I might do that. So you never know.
You got it, buddy. You know how to get me on there if you want me to do some backing vocals.
I'll give you writing credits. Don't worry.
Yeah. Hey, can we talk about Suicide Machines' Revolution Springs real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. I know you're amped about this album. I want to give it a proper listen. I haven't yet, but I want to hear some thoughts about it from you.
Yeah, all three of these records came out the same day.
I know, crazy.
Really kind of crazy stuff. This one was, for me, was a total nostalgia. Like, I'm going to buy this record and see what it is. And hey, look, if it sucked, I'm going to say that it sucked. But I got really lucky, and the Suicide Machines put out a Suicide Machine record. You know what Pearl Jam didn't do? They didn't put out a fucking Pearl Jam record. They put out a fucking steaming pile of shit. So this thing, Revolution Springs, it's political, it's personal, and you know what? It's punk. I really dig it. I don't think it's their best work, but it's 100% the Suicide Machines. Ska punk through and through. Highlights for me, Always Awkward, Flint Hostage Crisis, To Play Caesar is to be stabbed to death. Black Guitar Halo, Impossible Possibilities, Potter's Song, and the closing track, Cheers to You, where they do pull in a few horns for it.
Nice.
Quick note on this record is that this is the band's only release without Dan, I'm going to fuck up your last name, Lukanowski, who left the band in 2006. He was a longtime songwriter and the guitarist for Suicide Machines for every other record. Chances are, if you've seen them live, that's who you saw playing guitar. The dude who played guitar on this one, whose name I wrote down somewhere, no, I didn't. Sorry, dude, you did a great job. He's been playing with them since 2006, but really just kind of in a touring capacity when they would play, because they essentially broke up in 2006 with the exception of a few shows here and there.
Yeah.
For me, a longtime fan, I hope this isn't the end for this band. I know that they had kind of said, like, if this is kind of the end of the band, it's fine. For me, I'd like to see them go on, because it sounds like they're just really warming up. I know that they had some touring and some travel planned, but obviously the coronavirus thing is fucking all that up for a lot of people. When the world gets back to normal and you can go to a show, if the Suicide Machines come to your town, go see the fucking Suicide Machines. They are phenomenal live. They will re-intact your love of punk rock and what punk rock is supposed to mean. They're a phenomenal band. They're great guys on top of that. That's my feelings about this record and the band in general. Really fun record. You know exactly what you're getting out of it. Not quite as heavy as the last two, A Match and Some Gasoline,
There you go.
and War Profiteering.
Yep.
But it's certainly not the self-titled record. And I know Frank and I are big fans of Battle Hem and Destruction by Definition.
Totally.
It's in there.
And Steal This Record. I really like Steal This Record.
Steal This Record is good.
Honor Among Thieves is definitely one of my favorite tracks from them.
They're a great band. They're easily kind of forgotten because there's so many other things that came out right at the same time. Forget the fact that Disney put out 4 of their records. Like, they're just a really cool band. This is a great little, this band has matured. This band's got serious things to talk about. The Flint Hostage Crisis. They talk about police brutality. And they talk about their lives. It's really kind of nice to see them matured a little bit, but still being themselves, still being political, still being aggressive. Still really making you hit that gas pedal when you're driving. So I really dig them.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah. I mean, they're a band where those records Mark was mentioning earlier. I mean, we both used to listen to in the same company of one another constantly on that. So I'm definitely excited to take a listen to that. And thank you, Mark. That was awesome.
My pleasure.
So next episode's it's a little bit of a task. Yeah, it's a big one. It's a task. It's a beast for us. And listen, this is on the cuff half the time, so it could end up to be 2 episodes. I don't know yet. We'll kind of talk about that. But this is another versus. But it's one album versus another versus another, and those albums are Let It Be versus Let It Be versus Let It Bleed. That's right. The Beatles, Let It Be. Right.
The Replacements, Let It Be.
Yep. And the Rolling
Stones, let it bleed.
So why did we throw the Replacements in there? Well, because we can, right, Mark? I mean, that's it.
Right. and that was originally the idea was, the Beatles and the Replacements both have albums called Let It Be. And, if you're the Replacements, to name, that's like naming a record Abbey Road, right? Like, if you name something the same thing that the Beatles named something, you're automatically suggesting that there's at least that much weight or value to it. Right. And that's a bold statement.
It is.
Now you're the resident Replacements fan.
I am.
How I want to formulate this question as like not insultingly as I can.
Yeah.
Is this going to keep up?
So a couple of things, we have to go ahead and think about with some of these records. Let It Be, the Beatles was towards the end. I mean, technically, by virtue of release date, it's the last album, but we all know it was recorded prior to Abbey Road. And Let It Bleed was into the peak of really the Rolling Stones getting going, but they had such a back catalog. Let It Be,
it's actually my favorite Rolling Stones.
Yes, yeah, I know it is. For sure. Let It Be, the Replacements album. It's early on in their careers. Yes, it's the third record, but Paul Westerberg's only 24, 25 something years old here. It has a lot of coming of age themes, a lot of things that are mentioned that are kind of dated as far as there's a song called Answer Machine on there, or songs like See Your Video. There's even a Kiss cover on here, but the album is called Let It Be. So how does it stack up? Well, listen, it's a big instrumental album for me. I'm just gonna put it like that. It's got some of my favorite tunes on there. I would say Tim maybe is an album I listen to more of the Replacements, but to me, it's an album that has influenced me greatly. So I'm excited to kind of dig into it further. It's going to be a challenge, to pit all these three against each other, but I think it's going to be a good time, Mark.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. We've been actually talking about doing this one in particular for some time.
Yeah,
and I've avoided the Replacements album so that I can give it a genuine first listen and comparison. So we're gonna jump into that for you guys next week. Should be a lot of fun. If you want to play along at home, please check out those records. We have a podcast, or not a podcast, a playlist where you can actually play along at home, where we pick some of our favorite songs from the albums we've been doing, and we'll do some of those for the stuff you heard tonight. We'll update the playlist and share it around on the old Facebook links and Instagram, all that kind of stuff, so that you guys can check it out, hear some of the tracks as we get into it, and feel free to voice your opinion, and please play along at home. Leave us some comments, leave us some ratings and some reviews, some hearts and some thumbs and some stars, or whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yeah, check us out wherever you listen to podcasts. Instagram, follow us. YouTube, check us out. We're going to have a lot of stuff coming up because we have the time to do it right now. And we know
you're not doing anything else.
Absolutely.
We know your wife's got that list for you to do, and you're just hanging out back, smoking a cigarette behind the old what's that cabinet out back? The shed.
The shed.
Get that shed out there. You're smoking cigarettes. You're hiding it from the wife and the kids. You're drinking a couple brewskis out there. You get the podcast on.
Yep.
Right. Don't act like you don't got time.
That's right.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. And leave us, and on top of that, leave us a 5-star review, okay?
Yeah. As many stars as you can put on there.
Yeah, especially after you Pearl Jam fans have heard our reviews of it. So until next time, folks, stay safe in the quarantine world, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.